Welcome back to SuperBike Intelligence. Seriously, it's good to have you here. If you're watching this, you're probably not just killing time. You're here because motorcycles mean something to you. They're not appliances, they're not numbers on a spreadsheet. They're stories, moods, identities. And today, we're talking about one of those rivalries that quietly lives in every biker's head, even if we don't always admit it out loud. Honda versus BMW. Two names, two giants, two completely different ways of thinking about what a motorcycle should be. And hey, before we really dig in, if you enjoy these kinds of conversations, the ones that go beyond specs and lap times, give the video a like, maybe subscribe if you haven't already. Not because you have to, just because you want more of this kind of talk in your feed. Alright, let's right into it. Honda and BMW aren't just brands, they're philosophies with engines attached. And the reason this debate matters isn't because one is better. It's because they represent two very different answers to the same question. Why do you ride? Picture this. Early morning, cold air. You thumb the starter in your garage. The sound echoes off the walls, and for a second, before the helmet goes on, before the world wakes up, it's just you and the machine. That moment, Honda and BMW approach it in completely different ways. Honda feels like a quiet nod, like the bike saying, "Relax, I've got you." BMW feels more like a handshake with intent, firm, confident, almost challenging you back. And that difference runs deep. Honda's philosophy has always felt democratic, inclusive. Honda builds motorcycles as if they believe riding should be accessible, repeatable, and dependable no matter who you are or where you're going. There's a reason so many riders say, "I started on a Honda." Not because it was flashy, not because it made headlines, but because it worked every single time. Honda bikes don't beg for attention. They don't posture. They don't whisper promises of rebellion. They just show up, do the job, and somehow, over years, sometimes decades, they earn a kind of quiet respect that no marketing campaign can manufacture. BMW, on the other hand, has never been about blending in. BMW motorcycles feel like they were designed by people who believe riding is an experience you graduate into. There's a sense of intention, even seriousness, baked into their machines. Like, you didn't just buy a bike, you joined a way of thinking. And that's why riders defend BMW so fiercely. Because to them, it's not just a motorcycle, it's a statement about engineering, about innovation, about doing things their way, even when it makes people uncomfortable. You see it at traffic lights. A Honda rider waits calmly, visor cracked, engine ticking softly beneath them. No drama, no tension, just readiness. A BMW rider, upright posture, eyes forward, a subtle awareness of the machine's presence. The bike feels alert, almost coiled, like it's aware of its own complexity. Neither is wrong, but they attract very different people. Honda riders often talk about trust, not excitement, not edge, trust. They talk about miles, about journeys, about a bike that fades into the background in the best possible way, letting the ride take center stage. For them, the motorcycle is a partner, not a protagonist. BMW riders talk about feedback, about feel, about the sense that the bike is communicating with them constantly, for better or worse. There's an intimacy there, sometimes thrilling, sometimes demanding, but never boring. And this is where the emotional divide really starts. Honda doesn't want you thinking about the bike. BMW kinda does. Honda's ideal ride feels smooth, predictable, almost meditative. You roll through city streets, slip onto the highway, maybe take a long detour just because you can, and the bike never interrupts the flow. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't punish mistake. It just carries you. BMW feels more like a conversation. Sometimes a debate, sometimes a challenge. You feel the road more. The bike feels more present. And when it all clicks, when rider and machine sync, the satisfaction can be intoxicating. But when it doesn't, you notice that too. And that's why people argue about these brands like they're defending football clubs or family traditions. Honda gets criticized for being boring, too safe, too sensible. You hear it all the time. It lacks soul. It's too perfect. And honestly, that criticism says more about the rider than the bike. Because Honda's soul isn't loud, it's patient. It's built on the idea that reliability is emotional, that knowing your bike will start, run, and bring you home is its own kind of romance. BMW gets criticized for being complicated, over-engineered, expensive, sometimes even pretentious. And again, there's truth there, but also intention. BMW bikes often feel like they want something from you. Engagement, understanding, commitment. They reward attention, but they expect it too. Think about group rides. There's always that Honda rider who just disappears up the road, not because they're showing off, but because they're comfortable. They know the bike, they trust it, they're riding their ride, and then there's the BMW rider who becomes a focal point. Not always intentionally, but the bike has presence. Other riders ask questions, peek at details. There's curiosity there, sometimes admiration, sometimes skepticism. And that dynamic mirrors the brands perfectly. Honda unites people. BMW divides them. Honda builds loyalty quietly. BMW builds it loudly. Somewhere in the middle of all this, let me say this. If you're nodding along, or if you're already arguing with me in your head, hit that like button, drop a comment, or subscribe if you haven't. These videos live and breathe off your opinions, not mine alone. Alright, back to it. What really fascinates me is how these brands shape rider identity. Honda riders rarely feel the need to justify their choice. They don't wear it as a badge. They don't explain themselves, they just ride. There's a confidence in that, a kind of quiet self-assurance. BMW riders often feel deeply connected to why they chose BMW. They'll talk about engineering philosophy, innovation, heritage. Not to brag, but to explain. To contextualize, because riding a BMW often feels like an intentional decision, not a default one. Late night rides make this difference even clearer. On a Honda, you glide through empty streets, streetlights passing rhythmically, engine hum steady. It's almost therapeutic. The bike becomes a vessel for thought. You replay the day, you plan tomorrow, you breathe. On a BMW, the night ride feels sharper, more vivid. The bike feels aware of the darkness, the road texture, the silence. You're not just thinking, you're present, tuned in, alert, engaged. Neither experience is better. They're just different moods. And that's why comparing Honda and BMW on paper completely misses the point. This isn't about performance figures or features. It's about personality, about how a machine makes you feel when no one's watching. Honda feels like a lifelong companion. BMW feels like a challenging friend who pushes you to grow. Honda's reputation is built on trust earned over time. BMW's is built on innovation that sometimes arrives before people are ready for it. Honda wants everyone to ride. BMW wants riders to care deeply. And here's the thing. Riders often change sides as they change themselves. Younger riders, or those new to riding, often gravitate toward Honda. It feels sensible, safe, approachable. And there's no shame in that. In fact, there's wisdom in it. As riders gain experience, some start craving more character, more engagement, more intensity. That's often where BMW enters the picture. Not because Honda stopped being good, but because the rider changed. Then sometimes, years later, after chasing intensity, complexity, and edge, riders come back to Honda because simplicity becomes luxury, because peace becomes performance. And that cycle, that's the real story. Honda and BMW aren't enemies, they're chapters. They represent different seasons of riding life. That's why these debates get so heated. Because when someone criticizes your bike, they're not just critiquing a machine, they're questioning a version of you. Your priorities, your values, your idea of what riding means. So when someone says Honda is boring, they're often saying they fear predictability. When someone says BMW is overcomplicated, they're often saying they value ease over engagement. Neither is wrong, they're just honest reflections. And maybe that's why this rivalry never dies. Because deep down, most riders understand both sides, even if they swear allegiance to one. So here's how I'll leave it. Honda feels like the bike that will be there for you no matter what. BMW feels like the bike that will challenge you to be more present, more intentional, more involved. One is calm confidence. The other is deliberate intensity. One whispers, "Trust me." The other says, "Ride me properly." And if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Subscribe to SuperBike Intelligence if you want more conversations like this. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you stand. Honda, BMW? Or have you lived with both and found something unexpected in between? Because at the end of the day, the best motorcycle philosophy is the one that keeps you riding. And I want to hear which one speaks to you.